This is finally it.
Just like a god.
Imagine it. 1960. You're on an airplane and it crashes. You end up underwater in some underwater hellhole of a city. Welcome to Rapture. What is Rapture? Rapture is the Atlantis-looking city that you end up in, and you're trying to escape from it in the game Bioshock. I'm Ed Dangqi of E.S.E Productions, and I'm gonna do a review of the PC version of Bioshock. Why am I doing the PC version? Because when I went on YouTube, I searched for some PC reviews, and all I found was one review for the PC version. It wasn't bad, but I think the game deserves at least two for the PC version. Essentially an Xbox game, it was released for PC a little bit afterward. Not many people really noticed, and they got the Xbox version more. But the 360 version and the PC version aren't really all that different anyway. Some say that the graphics are different, and some say that the gameplay is a little different too. Well, of course the gameplay is different. Now, it makes it a little bit harder because you got the mouse, but I don't think that's really that much of a big deal. Bioshock doesn't have any multiplayer. Maybe that's what drove people away from it. But the reason it doesn't have multiplayer, you will find out if you actually played the game through. Anybody, I bet, anybody who's played the whole game through will realize that if Bioshock was a multiplayer game, it would completely mess it up. Now, that's something you gotta play the game to understand. The entire system of the game is way too related to its storyline that if there were a multiplayer, it would undermine the story and thus decrease from the game's excellence. Now, you play a man named Jack, and you end up in Rapture. You're trying to escape. You get contacted by this man named Atlas, who's going to try to help you get out of there, sorry. And the game immediately immerses you into the action. Right when you get out and start controlling your character, next thing you know, a flaming table is rolling towards you down a staircase, and immediately captures your attention and immerses you in a series of gameplay. There's very few calm moments, and when there's calm moments, you're still ready for another battle. It's an extremely fast-paced shooter that seems pretty patient at the same time. Now, your enemies are called Splicers. Splicers, the name comes from, well, a storyline relationship. These Splicers have, depending on what kind they are, they either have a gun, or they have a crowbar, or they have powers. Now, these powers come from plasmids. Plasmids are genetic modifications, and when you do get plasmids in this game as well, that's what changes it from a lot of other FPS. Using plasmids in this game is almost essential. The reason they have plasmids in the first place is probably because the AI is so amazing. Plasmids make it extremely different from other games, and you will see why if you actually ever try it. Now, the first plasmid you start off with is the Electro Bolt. The Electro Bolt is just like a zap of lightning, and it becomes extremely useful because it stuns your enemies. And you can electrocute water to stun whoever's in there too. Now, there is an issue there, because later you can freeze stuff too, but you can't freeze water. I thought that was kind of dumb since you can electrocute it too. But let's not get into that. There are a huge variety of plasmids that you can have, and it's ridiculous how much that there are, and how much were even omitted before the game was made. Now let's get on with the normal weapons though. Plasmids aside for a while. You start off with a wrench. Yeah, a wrench. Now, if you do easy mode, the wrench is going to seem extremely powerful until later in the game. But if you do medium, it actually gets more realistic. You can beat someone to death with the wrench with 2 to 5 hits, which is pretty intense, but it is just a wrench. You get the revolver almost immediately later, in kind of a deep, sickening way though. And you'll see why. Now, after the revolver, there are so many different weapons that you will get. And there are many chances to pick up the weapon, since almost all enemies that have a weapon will drop them, and you can pick them up or pick up the ammo from them. Later, you get different weapons that are absolutely unusual. So they seem pretty similar to other weapons before, but they all have different upgrades. There's a weapon upgrading system that's really creative. There's U-Vent, Power to the People, and then there's the normal shops. The Power to the People upgrades your weapons, while the U-Vent, you can gather materials to create custom bullets or ammo. So that gives your weapons different abilities. As for upgrades, you can increase the rate of fire on your shotgun so you don't have to go every time you shoot. And also you can increase damage for the weapons, and you can also increase the clip size or effects or any disadvantage. You can basically turn your weapon into something extremely perfect, which is really interesting, but you need to spend time and money doing so. Also, back to the plasmid. A plasmid you get by using Atom, which is essentially a storyline related object. Atom, I think, are stem cells harvested from some sort of sea slug, storyline stuff. And this stem cell gives you abilities. That's the electricity stuff. But it has some sort of MP too, called E. Whenever you use a plasmid once, if you click the mouse button or press the trigger, you lose a little E. And you need to get an E-plasmid, which is basically an injecting needle, and stab yourself in the wrist to inject more E. Now it's kind of sick, but it's an M game, so it's not really surprising. Now you get Atom, which you spend to get more plasmids. You get Atom from things called Little Sisters. These Little Sisters are these creepy little girls that go around stabbing dead people, which they call angels, for Atom. And when you kill a little sister, when you get a little sister by themselves, you can either harvest or rescue them. Most people have realized actually just rescue them. Now rescuing them gets you a few things. Rescuing them gives you half as much Atom as you can get, but it promises other gifts or what's the word for it? Other benefits later. While just harvesting them gives you maximum Atom and makes you kind of evil though. Rescuing and harvesting them will determine how the ending turns out, so that's kind of interesting too. But then, getting Little Sisters isn't that easy. In the menu of each level, you'll see how many Little Sisters there are, and how many you've captured, or released, or whatever. And with each Little Sister is something called a Big Daddy. And I'm sure every one of you have known or heard of whatever these things are. The Big Daddy is basically this genetically enhanced monster in a diving suit. There are two types of Big Daddies, but the first type you run into will give you one hell of a battle. It's really fast-paced battle against these Big Daddies, and it's gonna have to end fast because otherwise you will die. Now bringing up the death thing, there are things called Vita Chambers everywhere in the game. And that's a good thing, since if you're playing it on hard, it's going to be very easy to die. These Vita Chambers are really well placed. In every different area, there's a Vita Chamber near significant places. In saving, you just go through the menu and save. Additionally, whenever you enter a new level, it auto-saves for you, so that, on the PC version at least, if you ever want to go back to that place and start a different path or different combination of plasmid guns and harvesting or rescuing Little Sisters, you can start off in whichever mission you want. So that's kind of interesting too. Now an issue with the PC version would have to be the loading times. The loading times are pretty long, and they're pretty badly long that way. Now they have quotes that pop up in the bottom, which are storyline significant and kind of interesting, but they don't really fill up the time that you have to wait for the loading time. Otherwise, the game is extremely fast-paced and extremely involved. And the storyline is so deep and so amazing that it's gotta be something better than any Final Fantasy game I've ever played. Now, the Bioshock storyline, I have to say, it's worth being a novel. And it is I think it was taken from a novel before. Bottom line is, people, get Bioshock. It's a 10 out of 10 game. I'm out.